The PvP debate surrounding Ashes has always been a thing, but recently it's picked back up yet again. I've done this video 3 times already, but why not? Let's do a 4th. As always with this kind of debate, people really dig into their sides. The PvP enjoyer side says this game is not for you, go play your Care Bear games. And the PvE side says, look, you guys need us. Every MMO has to have casual PvE enjoyers. Without us, your game will probably fail. Now, I am a fan of PvP and MMOs, so you might think that I would naturally take that side. However, I try to take a neutral stance on this position as much as I can, because like the PvE enjoyers have said, the PvE fans are needed for this MMO to work. And what I don't want to do is scare away PvE-focused players, because I think this MMO has a ton to offer somebody that is focused on PvE and MMOs, and I think you should give it a chance and not be scared away by the gatekeepers that are rampant when you talk about Ashes of Creation. First, what I want to look at is, do PvP MMOs actually always fail? And what does failure mean? Would an MMO running for years and being the 3rd most played MMO in the West with around 500,000 players per month count as a failure? Because if that is the case, then Black Desert Online is a failure. And Albion Online as the 4th most played MMO and EVE Online as the 8th most played MMO are also failures. But they're not failures, so PvP MMOs can succeed at least to some extent. Certainly an MMO does not need to have millions of active players to be a success, at least in my opinion. But still, I get it, for every Black Desert Online there are 5 Mortal Onlines that crashed and burned. What causes these PvP MMOs to fail? Is it just the PvP, or is there more to it? To me, there's a lot more to it. To me, by far the biggest factor is most PvP MMOs have had very low budgets, and they were made by small indie developers compared to PvE MMOs made by large existing studios with massive budgets. In other words, I would say that most PvP MMOs were not serious attempts at all. So maybe part of PvP MMOs always failing is simply because the sample size is so small with so few serious attempts. There have only been a few PvP MMOs made in the last 10 to 15 years that had large budgets and therefore were serious attempts. For me, I'd really narrow it down to maybe just 2 MMOs, Black Desert Online, which has been a success, and ArcheAge, which is an absolute complete failure at this point. Unfortunately for us Ashes of Creation fans, Ashes is based pretty heavily on ArcheAge and not BDO. So for Ashes to succeed, it has to correct the failings of previous MMOs, in particular ArcheAge, which to me are all the following in no particular order. Pay to win, underfunded, no polish, half-baked systems and too ambitious of a scope, bad PvE content, too much reliance on sandbox and player-driven content, the PvP was too hardcore, and overly grindy player progression. Now as for pay to win, Ashes will not have pay to win, so on that we are good. Ashes is also not underfunded, but I also don't think it has unlimited funding, and I do think it has to launch at some point, which of course I've talked about before, just like everything. But Ashes will be one of the few serious PvP MMO attempts with a large amount of funding. Next, I want to lump all the following points together. On all these, we really have to wait and see. The concept of Ashes is one of the most complex ever seen in the MMO genre, which to some extent was an issue with ArcheAge. They tried to do a lot and some of the systems felt half-baked at launch. This is a problem even much less complex MMOs had at launch, simply because it's very hard to be polished enough to compete with the existing MMOs that have had 10 years or more to polish their systems. Bad PvE content is also something I felt ArcheAge and a lot of similar PvP-focused MMOs had as an issue. Again, we have to wait and see on whether it has better PvE than its predecessors, but this is something that I'm definitely watching closely. A lot of previous PvP MMOs were sandbox oriented, and when you have a sandbox oriented MMO, you rely very heavily on player driven content. And as we know, players aren't always the most reliable in terms of creating compelling content, and where Ashes is different, it's a hybrid containing both sandbox and theme park elements. And there's a ton of theme park content planned. If you combine that with the sandbox elements, in theory, this could be a very content rich MMO. MMO. Then of course there's a huge one. The PvP was often way too hardcore in some previous PvP MMOs. On this, on paper at least, I think Ashes might be okay. Because while PvP is always on if someone attacks you and you do not fight back and they kill you, that attacker will receive a massive penalty called corruption. And when you die, you will never drop items, only a percentage of your gatherable materials. Unless of course you get corrupted, then you might drop items. This is a key difference from MMOs like Mortal Online, Ultima Online, or Darkfall that were hardcore full loot PvP MMOs. And hey, while I'm on the side of wait and see in terms of caravan attackers getting a penalty, I'm not opposed to it if we find it is needed, but I don't know yet if it's needed or not, because we just don't have enough information yet. And my experience from Arcade is that, as a person that successfully ran a lot of trade packs solo, that's what I based my wait and see take on, because I didn't view it as a problem in Arcade, but others have viewed it as a problem in Arcade in similar games, but I say just wait and see on that one, but I'm not opposed to putting that penalty in if it is needed. Then another issue a lot of PvP MMOs have had is overly grindy player progression. On this, we really don't know yet. And of course, I've already done that video, but Ashes is based on a very grindy MMOs, so hopefully Ashes isn't filled with a ton of boring, grindy progression systems. But again, we have to wait and see. So on paper, some of the issues previous PvP MMOs had might be addressed. Some we still have to wait and see. Next, I want to talk about why a PvE focused player might be interested in Ashes. But first, we gotta talk about our sponsor. We continue to get huge sponsors on this channel, but none are bigger than today's sponsor, Fire. Fire is hot. Humans have always liked fire. In fact, fire is something that is theorized to be a key factor in human evolution. Fire gave humans warmth, light, protection from predators, a way to create more advanced hunting tools, and a method for cooking food. One hypothesis is that cooking food allowed for human brain size to increase over time. As cooked food is more easily digested, therefore proteins, which are a key part of the brain, are more easily absorbed. Cooked food also gives humans more energy, which allowed for more banging to occur, which meant more humans. Which is why I said at the beginning, fire is hot.
That's really hot.
Thanks, Fire. So why would a PvE focused player want to play Ashes? Because I think there could be a lot of content in this game for the PvE focused players, and I think with the restrictions in place with the corruption system to at least slow down griefing, you may very well be able to enjoy the PvE systems despite not liking PvP in MMOs. First, let's start with the Artisan System. Ashes of Creation is looking to take the Star Wars Galaxies crafting system and improve upon it. Many MMO veterans consider Star Wars Galaxies crafting to be the best the genre has ever seen. Crafting in Ashes matters a lot more than it does in most modern MMOs, since crafters will make the best gear in the game. You won't just farm the same bosses over and over again to get the best gear, instead you will be participating in the crafting systems to produce the best gear. Whether that is buying the completed gear from crafters or sending your gathered materials to a processor who then sends the processed materials to a crafter, or farming the world bosses for the materials they drop that are needed for crafting, in some way you are probably going to interact with this system. Another thing that might get PvE focused players interested is this MMO is different in terms of how PvE works, with most of the PvE being in the open world. Are you tired of PvE and every single MMO being a direct copy of WoW with no originality at all? Well, Ashes is different. Will it be better? Well, that remains to be seen, but at the very least, it will be different. And if you never played Arcade, you likely never played an MMO with a fantastic naval system. Ashes is taking the Arcade naval systems, which are by far the best in the MMO genre, and improving upon them. Epic naval bosses where you use huge ships and huge raids to fight them, some of the best fishing systems ever seen in the genre, and a myriad of other open seas content is planned. Then of course you have the node system. The node system is the main thing that Ashes is bringing to the genre that is pretty unique. Nodes level up based on player activity within the node's zone of influence. As they level, new PvE content unlocks. Getting a node to the Metropolis stage unlocks unique content based on the node type. Divine nodes, for instance, unlock a unique catacomb dungeon that links the Metropolis node to its vassal nodes. New story arcs will also unlock as nodes level, which is a system that delivers the story on your server, which, because each server could be very different, the story arcs available might be different on each server. And of course, events are tied to the node systems as well. Events are not a new system, but the way the events work might end up being different. And of course, I'm just scratching the surface here. I have a video that is an hour and a half long that covers everything they have planned for this massive project. And the updated 2024 version is being worked on as well. That video video details everything there is to know about every single system. And of course, the wiki is the best resource if you truly want to know everything about this project. So my view is, if PvE is your main thing, at least give Ashes a chance. Don't let the gatekeeper scare you away. I think you might be pleasantly surprised by what this MMO could offer. And that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching.